You are listening to Browns Bites for this week. The Browns are coming off their joint practices against the Eagles, the Eagles preseason game. A lot going on in terms of preparation for the Chiefs. And then the cutdown day for rosters is August 29th, I believe, everybody, which means they all have to go from 90 to 53 all in one move, or they can start releasing guys. The Browns waived Chris Westry, the corner, today, which I suspect was sort of an out of respect type move. But anyway, they've got to work their way down. So in honor of that, I know she said she doesn't like these at all and has been anti them, but secretly she's been super pumped about doing this. And Bree's going to release her 53-man roster and practice squad that she's come up with. So Bree, take it away.
So maybe a surprise, Pete, but my roster, I'm not actually going to have a kicker on it. I'm just going to forgo that position overall.
That may be, if the Browns, if we get to cut down day and they decide they're not indicated York, I fully expect that will be what happens. They will just waive him and then bring in about 5 guys to try out.
No, I'm saying I'm not even going to fill the kicker position. We're just going to not fill it. No kicker.
Hey, go for 2.
We're only going for 2. That's all we're going to do. I'm going to fill my roster with wide receivers only.
I'm good with just foregoing punter while we're at it.
That's fine.
Then,
just throw a Hail Mary and turn it over.
Same thing. On kickoffs, I'm going to find the biggest mule lineman who can just boot the thing, and we're going to go that route.
That's it.
Feels like it's been a long time since joint practices, but joint practices did happen last week. This was the premier event for the Browns preseason because they had all their guys going. The Eagles had all their guys going, and they did it for 2 days. First day is more important than the second day because the first day is longer. There's more to it. More guys were in that than the second day. The second day, the Browns had some guys come out with some very precautionary situations that didn't practice, like Myles Garrett and his foot that didn't seem to matter to him, and all those things. So both days matter. The common opinion was that the Browns got the better of the Eagles the first day. I would ascribe some of that to the fact that the Browns are a team that has a lot to prove to themselves as much as anyone else, and they wanted to make that statement to a team that was within a play of the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl last year in the Eagles. I think it was extremely important to them that they came out and played well. The pass rush just destroyed the Eagles, which is particularly concerning. Obviously, they had some guys out, but the Eagles have, if you go by PFF, for example, the Eagles have the number 1 rated offensive line in the NFL. The Browns are number 2. And the Browns, if you go by like the Eagles radio guy, Elliot Shore-Parks or whatever, at one point he suggested that the Browns had like 8 sacks on Jalen Hurts. So that is certainly a big deal, a reason to be optimistic about what they have on that side of the ball. And that, all the investments they've made there have been worth it. Between that and just thinking about this, like, I know so much of this is about offense, quarterback, and we're going to talk about that. And for a certain population, the kicker is a very big deal. It's very hard for me not to sit here and think the Browns defense, so long as they stay healthy, is going to be a problem. You probably saw highlights of Kenny Pickett throwing touchdowns against the Buffalo Bills in preseason, and he looked good. And like, you're impressed, and you said, yeah, you have to take him seriously. I'm also sitting there thinking, okay, that's cool, but how are they going to protect him? Because ultimately that's all it's going to matter. If the Browns come out and just put him on the ground all day, they're going to win.
Agreed. As a Browns fan for the last couple of years, regardless of how the offense looked in general, we have had the benefit and the luxury of having a really solid offensive line. And I think that we would have been way worse had we not have had like the strength of the offensive line. Like, that just seems to be a position that the Browns are pretty good at. Now, who we had playing behind offensive line, not where we needed it to be in terms of like either just being average quarterback in general. So, there's only so much an offensive line can do, but they were good at their jobs. On the flip side, the Browns did not have the defensive line. And, saying goes, you win the game in the trenches. And so outside of Myles Garrett, there's really just been like a lot of turnover at those positions. It's been a pretty like unstable position group. And so what gets me excited about this is not only are we going to have, or we should have, one of the best offensive lines in the league, it's now, are we actually going to also have one of the best defensive lines in the league? And so I am excited about that because I want to wreck games. I want this defense to wreck games like we have seen happen to many of our quarterbacks that have played football in a Browns uniform. I'm getting more and more excited about this and seeing this defense come to life in an actual real life football game, not a preseason game. But everything that came out of the camp last week and even just seeing it in preseason games, it seems pretty promising, Pete.
Once again, Bria has lost contain on the excitement.
I was there last week and so first of all, I stayed up to watch the entire preseason game last Thursday. I got to watch it in full. There were no fragments last week. It's my first time sitting down and watching it from start to finish. And I can't believe that I was up until it was like 11 o'clock, 11:10 to watch the game end in a tie. But alas, that is what I did. And I found myself, my interest was piked the entire time because there were a lot of really good things to watch outside of one position, but there were a lot of really good things to watch. And to me, it just showed that I was really worried about depth just in general. Still feels like that's an area of concern, but I do actually feel like there are some really young players, particularly on the defensive side, that are making a name for themselves. And I haven't been able to say that recently about the Browns.
The Browns are going to cut people that are good football players.
Yes, that is something we're not used to doing. We're used to looking for scraps.
And to touch on what you were talking about, Jalen Hurts obviously became a huge star last year. He was phenomenal. But going into that season, the Eagles were going to be very good for one reason. They were dominant on both lines of scrimmage.
Yeah.
The Browns are in position to do that very same thing. I'm old enough to remember the Carolina Panthers with Jake Delhomme in the Super Bowl because all they did was win the line of scrimmage. That was who they were. And they had Steven Davis and all this, but they just killed people up front, both sides of the ball. Here again, that's one more reason. Like Deshaun Watson obviously is the focal point. $230 million, all the draft picks you traded, all this, but he's also going to have the benefit of that line and Nick Chubb and those other things. So these are all things that make you feel good. But to your point, yes, there are young players that I hear from fans and some media who are like, you cannot cut this guy. And some of them are going to get cut or traded or whatever. So the Browns should have a good 53-man roster, whatever it is, or, and obviously, the concept of the evolving roster will continue, but there are a lot of guys on this team. You're sitting there going, I would love to get him on the practice squad. I don't know if he's going to get there. And that's an awesome situation, even though you don't want to see those guys leave. So for example, Mahmoud Diabate,
love him,
out of Utah by way of Florida. He had a great game in that game. He got the safety. Now he made a great read and was super aggressive and all this. I would credit the defensive line, Jordan Elliott, who I have not been super impressed with. I think that was the best play he's had all preseason, just taking on two dudes and clogging them up. And he made a great play. And then he comes back later and forces the fumble. And I highly recommend Brian Baldinger. I love his breakdowns anyway, because I can always tell he's standing up when he's doing them because he's so pumped up.
100% he's standing.
Yes, but he gets so excited, and he's genuinely excited about what he's watching. So he's done them on DeJuan Jones, but and this week he was on Mahmoud Diabate, and he's just super into it. You get there and you're like, yeah, he looks good. So yeah, that's one example of a guy where you can't get rid of him. You can't get rid of him. And I'm looking at this roster and I think they're only going to keep 5 linebackers. It's going to make it really difficult. I think it's going to be between him and Tony Fields. And I think whoever loses that battle is going to be playing on an NFL roster somewhere this season. Ronnie Hickman.
Yes, my guy.
3 interceptions so far this preseason. Obviously he left the game. I believe it was a shoulder injury, they called it. I think he's back at practice already, but he's a guy who's just, the ball has found him and he's made plays on it. And it's been awesome. I would caution people on the one thing. Yes, he's doing very well. He also got just destroyed against Washington on the one route in the game where he had 2 picks. He got beat badly on that because he's not as good playing backwards. He's not as good turning around and playing with his back to the quarterback, but he's doing things that Ronnie Hickman got very good at Ohio State. I think the Browns are putting him in a good position to continue to do those things. So I feel pretty good about his chances of making the roster. And then Austin Watkins Jr., the wide receiver, not a rookie, but obviously has not some expensive acquisition. He's the guy that the Browns signed when Marquise Goodwin went on the non-football illness list with his blood clots. And this was just a guy you added, and he's been great. And he's one of the most productive players in preseason. I watched the game and I felt like the Eagles defensive backs were paid actors who were there to make him look more heroic as I watched, as they fell down when like in times they just got out of the way so he could make catches. Like it was sort of like it looked scripted to how good he was. And he was great. He was
But once again, Pete, it feels like that's not something that we're used to watching. We're used to having that happen to us.
Yes.
Where this wide receiver comes out of nowhere and just makes these incredible plays and catches. And I will say I know he had some misses and some drops. It felt like I tweeted about like all he does is catch the ball and then he like dropped the ball. But yeah, I would say like he looks super reliable, and I don't know that he's going to actually make the roster, which again is not something we're used to saying.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think he's automatic. Right now I'm projecting him to make it, but like he plays X and that's it. And the problem with that is Amari Cooper plays X and Cedric Tillman plays X. And right now, when you're in these preseason games, Cedric Tillman starts the game and then Austin Watkins has to wait for him to come out so he can go in. That's not an easy transition. I don't know if Watkins does anything on special teams.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, does he have a spot just based on, can he do anything on special teams? Because I feel like the Browns were thinking that Jakeem Grant was going to be a special teams returner. So like that was going to take up a roster spot. Like I don't really want to waste, now that we're at a point where we are saying that it feels like there are guys on this team that are going to get cut that deserve to make the team. I don't want to waste a roster spot for that. Like I'm at that point now where I don't really care about a punt returner or a kickoff returner. Like how big of a deal is that these days?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I wrote about this week. So like I discussed this idea. So like Jakeem Grant always felt like a long shot to make this team because he was coming back from the Achilles, right?
Yep.
And the Browns had Donovan Peoples-Jones as a punt returner last year, and he was great at it. And they had Jerome Ford kick return last year, and he was great at it. Is Jakeem Grant good enough compared to those two who are already doing it to justify his own roster spot?
No.
And the other part of that is when you signed Jakeem Grant last year, I think part of the thought process is he was going to do some of the things Elijah Moore is currently doing because he's very athletic. He's got incredible speed and you could line him up in different places, do some of these things. Well, Elijah Moore is now doing that. So now you look at Jakeem Grant and you're going, well, maybe let's say he's 10% better at the DPJ was last year at punt returns, and he's 10% better than Jerome Ford at kick returns. And maybe he can be depth for some of the stuff Elijah Moore does. Is that enough to give him that spot over, say, a 10th offensive lineman in a world where there are just, there are only so many talented 300-pound people?
Yeah, not in my opinion. And I did happen to see your article about this, but like, well, I want to rewind a little bit actually about Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I feel like that is one name that I don't feel like I've heard a lot about. And I'm surprised by that a little bit, because I feel like DPJ has been a player that has really always been pretty reliable and consistent for this team. And maybe he's just having a really quiet camp, just doing what he needs to do. There's really probably no threat of him losing his roster spot, but I'm just like curious, DPJ obviously with Cooper and Elijah Moore, I feel like DPJ always kind of had to play up in a way where he was expected to do things or be a player that he was really never meant to be. So maybe this is really just getting him back down to, being a really good third option.
Well, in this, really.
In this receiving core. So no, I feel like just let DPJ do it.
Yeah.
I guess where I'm at with the whole punt return, kick return thing. Number one, if the ball gets kicked into the end zone, can we just take a knee?
I'm with it. Love
I
it.
don't need to see anyone run the ball out. Like typically it feels like it goes against us. We don't actually get up to, is it the 25-yard line now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
25.
25.
Like we don't get there. We get to the 20. I'm like, what are we doing?
Well,
What are we
that
doing?
or you get a penalty and suddenly you're at the 15.
Exactly. And then you're back. You're going
Or
backwards.
worse, somebody gets hurt. Like
Exactly.
To me, I think the upshot isn't worth it. Now, the thing is, like, as a special teams coach, you don't really build a name for yourself by taking touchbacks every time. I think there's an element to that.
Understood.
But I'm with you. Like that's and I did this with Mike Prefer. I like did the math and like it was worth all the times the Browns returned the ball out of the end zone, which was an insane number. It was like 51 times.
Felt like we did it every time.
And it was worth 0.1 yards.
I couldn't. So that's like one of the things that drove me crazy about him is I felt like we made really bad decisions when it came to that.
Right. So DPJ as the number 2 receiver, number 3 option was a great punt returner. And he's had a good camp. I mean, particularly early in the summer, there was more talk about how well, how he was like still crushing it, but he's always sort of like, he doesn't talk.
Yeah. He flies under the radar.
Elijah Moore does a lot of talking, which I enjoy. Like, I love it. The thing with him, it was an all-time preseason move. The preseason broadcast is always rough. God bless local ABC. They try. And Aditi's awesome. But I wish they would, and I said this, when I tweeted this out, I wish they would just let her talk. I don't need her to just interview players. Just let her talk. She's awesome.
Agreed.
But she did have the photo of Kevin Stefanski. And when she gave it to Elijah Moore and he's like, with this giant smile on his face, I'm going for 300 yards on him. I'd set a record that would never be broken.
So I didn't get to see the local coverage, Pete. So I didn't get to see.
You got the NFL
I didn't get
Network?
to see ABC because it was blacked out. So I ended up watching it on the NFL Network, which was very vanilla.
I thought, didn't you have Ross Tucker doing it for the Eagles?
Yeah. Yes, I believe he was, and I like Ross Tucker actually. So it was interesting because I actually felt like they were very positive about the Browns, which I feel like from a national perspective, the Browns, as of the last 2 years, they've not been talked about in a positive light, regardless. Seems like a lot of people are almost like afraid to talk about the Browns in a positive light, especially at the national level.
Dismissive is how I would. I think
but so I felt like they were actually very positive, and they were hyping up some of our players, and but then eventually it did get into just like a Philadelphia love fest. Like the last like quarter and a half was I was like nausea. I'm like, I love Jalen Hurts too, but like this is a lot, shoving it down my throat type of thing.
But yes, like that's part of it. DPJ does his job, does it at a high level. Is he a superstar? No, but particularly now, if he's the 4th option, all the more reason to let him return punts. And the Jerome Ford situation with his hamstring, maybe that changes how you view it. But I still don't sit there and go, we need a roster spot just for this. Like, to me, it's too expensive. And part of the problem is you're probably carrying 3 quarterbacks, and that gives you even less ability to do some of those types of things. So I don't look at it like that. Now, the thing with Austin Watkins Jr., though, is when Marquise Goodwin was like, we were going, oh, he's probably going to make the team. He doesn't play specials either. So like there's a world where Austin Watkins Jr. doesn't necessarily have to. However, the problem is if he can only play X, that could limit him in a way that may hurt him and ultimately still see him land outside of the roster. And like the other part of like the whole wide receiver argument, like this was, people talking about, well, they need to keep 7. 1, no, they don't. 2, the other part of this that we sort of forget about, this is after injuries. Obviously, Marquise Goodwin isn't injured, but in that category, Michael Woods the second goes down with the Achilles in the offseason. And then Dalen Baldwin busts his hamstring, and Noah Weiskopf for Browns Digest caught up with him and did an interview. And like, he would love to come back. I don't know if that's realistic. If none of those things happen, and I understand that like part of this is injuries happen, but like, you would have had a glut of just talented guys. It's much easier to find a guy that you can put on the practice squad like Dalen Baldwin was last year, as opposed to finding a 300-pound guy, because they just don't exist. There just aren't enough of them. The Browns and the Eagles are spoiled with how much depth they have at that position. So I am not willing to say that Austin Watkins Jr. is a lock. I also think it's insane, the idea of people who think David Bell is going to get cut. I would be absolutely stunned if that happens. All he does is do his job, and coaches love him for that. But that whole thing is interesting that we've got this many guys. You're sitting there going, I don't know. I don't know if we can let him go. Well, they only get to keep 53. And right now I see a ton of people who are trying to keep 59 players on this team. I would love to be able to do it. It's not going to happen. Now, before we leave that, it'd be against the rules not to talk about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who is designated fun.
Love him.
And you got the Eagles broadcast for this. So this is interesting because Ross Tucker was all over this. I saw a clip. I sent you the clip.
Him.
I didn't realize you were watching it. But yes, he's all about it.
He was like, he's an NFL starting quarterback. I was like, whoa.
I saw a lot of that this week. I was, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, they were very impressed by his play. And I mean, quite frankly, like all he's done is make things look easy. And I know I will say he wasn't perfect, but I mean, he truly just is electric. And I am really sad that this is going to be the last time that we really get to see him play because he's just fun to watch.
Well, he'll get to play the Chiefs a little bit, but yeah, I mean,
no, that's what I mean. Like this is the last game that we're going to get to see coming up this week.
This was his worst game by far.
I know, which is wild because he still looked good.
And but that's part of the thing is like it's preseason. You don't really care. So if he threw that one ball and the Eagles DB was paying attention enough to intercept it, like nobody was going to suddenly like be like bummed and no longer able to have fun. Like it's just something about that freedom and just being it like we talked about this last year with Josh Dobbs and how Josh Dobbs, because the fact that he's got like a career he can immediately step into the second he leaves football, that he just gets to play like a kid and just be like, shit, I'm going to have as much fun as possible and we're going to see how it goes. And that's it. And you got all those great moments last year with like the shirt tearing scramble and some of the throws he was making and stuff. And he just looked like a kid just having a great time with it, which is what Dorian Thompson-Robinson has been this year. Now, the difference is obviously that DTR is a rookie and he's going to be around a while, but like far and away his worst game and still got to make some big plays and do some things that were just great.
Getting penalized for blocks, right?
Yes.
That was, I mean, okay, so just pause for a minute. To me, he looks like he just loves playing football. Like, I know that sounds like really stupid and really
no, it does not. It's
silly,
absolutely...
but he truly just looks like he is like having the time of his life and he loves every minute of what he's doing. And sometimes I feel like when you watch professional athletes play, like sometimes I feel like that's lost a little bit. And so he has just this very like childlike feel to him while still being obviously like very professional and very good. And it's just like very refreshing to see.
No, I mean, it doesn't sound crazy because there are any number of players who look at this like a job because
like Jadeveon Clowney, maybe.
Well, I wish he thought of it like a job. But there are players who just no, and I mean this, they're totally professional. They take it seriously and they want to be good at it for the sake of being, for the sake of a career, but it is a career to them. And when they leave the building or whatever, they've done what they've got to do for the week. They're going to be like any normal person would. DTR is an exception to that point. He loves the game. And I'll bring up a name who I really don't like for any number of reasons, but Brett Favre had sort of that energy where you could tell he loved every second of being out there. And like, that's why for a lot of quarterbacks who came up, he was their favorite quarterback because of that exuberance, everything, in addition to the insane throws and everything else. But like now you've got DTR, who's that same thing. And he just plays a way that makes it fun. And it reminds you of sort of like, rookie Baker Mayfield, where it was just fun to watch football and to do all those things. So yeah, like I am torn in that I cannot wait for the season to start, but I also am, I don't want to be done watching DTR because it's just fun. And it's great. And the fact that he got a penalty, which was perfectly called, he earned it when he went for seconds on the block and just drilled dude out of bounds. But the thing is, like, his teammates loved it, and that's part of it, is like earning that respect. Now, it was funny because Deshaun Watson, again, later talking to Aditi, was like, "Don't do that. Just get out of bounds, or just throw the one block or whatever. Take care of your body." But that has an effect on your guys. And like one of the things that's been sort of interesting about preseason so far is, we've talked about this heading into the first preseason game. Like guys are really enthusiastic about their teammates, and there's a lot of energy on the sideline, and guys are just like really excited and pulling for each other in a way that like it has a youthful quality to it, which is great because you want this team to be excited. You want these guys to enjoy being around each other. And we always talk about this stuff like, what does building a culture look like? Now, if they don't win, it won't matter, and everybody will call it, well, the culture sucks. But I think these are things that like you look at them and you go, okay, I see a belief in one another to the point. Yeah, that just I think it will lead to
Hopefully
something positive eventually. Yeah. Now the flip side is we started with Cade York making 3 kicks, and we were all or 4 kicks with the extra point. We're all sitting there going, all right. And then he misses the last 2, and obviously it only counts officially for 1.
I have something to say about this, Pete.
Go ahead.
Well, I took 10 minutes out of our podcast and my life to defend this man and pull all of these facts, which I still believe in.
Your facts are 100% right.
To have him turn around and have the game be on the line with him making or missing the kick, because obviously it's the exact scenario that you talked about last week, where you really only care about your kicker when they march down the field in the last minute, 30 seconds of the game, and you need them to make the kick to win the game. Like that's when they matter.
Yep.
Before half, end of the game. And that's exactly the scenario that he was put in and that he failed. So I feel like Cade York, I'm mad at him because he made me look like a fool after I spent countless minutes, Pete, on pulling all this information. But I will say, all that being said, I still feel very passionate about, and we're going to get there. My main concern is, and what I really want to see that needs to play out, is Deshaun Watson is still the most important piece of this entire team. And we have to stop with the Cade York stuff. I get it. It's frustrating. They'll find a new kicker if they don't want to keep him.
I mean, that's the thing, is like all this, and I get it. Like, you're mad about the draft pick. Fine. But like ultimately, when cut down day happens, if they're either going to be happy with him and keep him because they believe in the talent, and I suspect they're going to keep him because they believe in the talent, or they're going to cut him and try out kickers and then sign one. And then every week, people are going to have to sit there and potentially whine about the kicker until one works.
Well, and that's the thing, Pete. I don't know why we are thinking, or fans are thinking, that we can just cut him and go out and sign someone and they're going to just make everything. Like we still cutting Cade York and signing a new kicker does not solve the world's problems. Like, they're still going to miss kicks. Like, we could still be in the same situation, the same problem 5 games into the season.
Bree, Mystery Box has never missed a kick. Mystery Box has never missed a kick.
All right.
But that's the mentality we have. Like, one of the names that was brought up,
Which name?
Whole thing, it was Rodrigo Blankenship, who was kicking for the Colts in a dome. Like, they play in a dome. That doesn't help. Like, it's great that the kicks go in, but like, it does not help you kick in Cleveland, which is the whole thing. Because I suspect what will happen is Cade York will end up going to a team in a dome
somewhere else, and
or
he'll be
south
like,
of the Mason-Dixon line, and kick 60-yarders and kill people. And everybody's gonna have to sit there, and then that will be the next argument. Will be, well, we shouldn't have gotten rid of Cade York because he's doing great. We should have stuck with him. Like,
exactly.
And that's the problem. Is it's like, it's really frustrating to kick in the AFC North, and it's even more frustrating that you have Justin Tucker in Baltimore, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame and is arguably the greatest kicker of all time, which sort of reinforces this notion that, oh, it should be easy. It's really not. And like, the Steelers pay a bunch of money to Chris Boswell, and there have been years where he's just awful. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. But ultimately, that is all secondary to me, because my number one concern on this team, and Bree's been on this all offseason, and she's 100% right, is Deshaun Watson. None of this matters if Deshaun Watson isn't good. And I'm not suggesting he won't be good. I think he will be good. But regardless, everybody who's listening to this or who's a Browns fan is going to be sitting there with a little pit in their stomach when the Browns kick off on September 10th going, I hope he's good.
Listen. No, finish your thought.
But it's just like, that's it. Like, that's it. Like, because if he's good, it's going to fix all these other things. If he sucks, it doesn't matter who's kicking. It doesn't matter who's doing a lot of things. He's got to be the dude who's good. So that's easily the number one concern.
I want the pressure to be all on Deshaun Watson's shoulders. I do not want the pressure to be on the kicker. Like
Yes.
that is where we should be at. And Deshaun Watson, because I know someone's going to twist this into like, I'm just setting this up for Deshaun Watson to take the blame for everything. That is not what I am doing.
Well,
what I am saying is
to your point,
Deshaun Watson himself wants the pressure.
Yes.
He wants this to all be on him, as he should, as any good quarterback or a quarterback that thinks that they are in that elite level. Like that is the mindset that you want your quarterback to have. So can we, number one, we have to give him a chance. It still is a fear of mine because we just don't know. We don't know until we know, right? And this fear is not going to go away until we actually see it happen. But at this point, that is the mindset we want him to have. And from what he says and what he's talking about, it sounds like he is in that mindset. Like he knows it's on him, right? Like he understands the pressure. Like the offense is going to run through him.
Well, he had a press conference today and was talking about how Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt have given him the keys to the offense and that he's driving it and he has control over a ton of things.
Well, there you go.
Like he's literally saying it's me. Like he doesn't have to say that. He could just not say that and leave it out there. But he is telling you, and he's done to his credit. There are some things when he says things like my ordeal, I want to freaking choke him out. But when he's talking about this, like he owns it. He owns what he has to be. He does not shy away from this fact. He's been since the start of the offseason this year. He's been moved past that. And it's all about, I have to be the guy. It's on me to make this work and everything you want to hear him say. Now, that doesn't change the fact that ultimately he's got to go out and do it. But that is where everything, he is being that guy that we want him to be in terms of what we expect a quarterback to do. And if things go wrong, where the blame's going to lie. And even last year, he didn't shy away from the fact. We talked about this. We thought, for as I'd almost say verklempt as he was in some of his media availabilities when he was going through the controversies and the trials and stuff, he became very open and very communicative and very sort of honest with his thought process about he was dealing with in those 6 games, which I thought was refreshing in some ways and sort of helpful for him. I think he's very interesting to listen to and how he talks and some of the things he says, but like he's saying it right out. And I think that's part of it is I don't think he's saying this for the benefit of Cade York, but I think it's sort of to say for the benefit of everybody else on the team. Bring it, put it on me. Don't worry about those other people. It's on me to take care of this and make it work, which is what I want him to say.
Well, yeah, that and the fact that we have been conditioned to rely so heavily on Nick Chubb in our running game that I think Deshaun's also trying to prepare us all for the offense probably seeing a lot more passing than what we might be used to. I mean, like, just think about how many arguments we had on Twitter last year when it came to how many times Nick Chubb ran the ball, how many touches he got. I mean, like, I do think we need to just prepare ourselves for the fact that, like, this is going to be a passing offense. Like, Deshaun Watson was not brought in to hand the ball off to Nick Chubb. And I love Nick Chubb. Again, though, like, this is what he wants. This is what we're going to see. And it should look and feel very different.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how much, we get into pass run differential when we go, because obviously he's going to run the ball some, and that may sort of change the dynamic a little bit, because obviously we saw him in the one preseason game and he threw 3 passes for 12 of the greatest yards in NFL history and then ran 3 times for 20. By the same token, I think the way Nick Chubb touches the ball will be different this year. I think he will get carries, but I think he's going to catch more passes. Yeah,
I agree. And I welcome that.
Yes. Take the 4 guys out of the way in front and have him only have to take on potentially 7 defenders is a hell of a lot better than taking on all 11.
Well, and not to mention to just even have the threat of having a quarterback that can pass and run causes so many issues for a defense. And we just haven't had that. Like like our offense, I don't want to say it was one-dimensional, but it was almost like it was just very basic, predictable, I guess is the better word. Then love Kevin Stefanski. I'm not saying that like to slight him at all. I just think from like a quarterback perspective, we just didn't have a quarterback that was super mobile or super dynamic. So the fact that we're going to have that, or that we should have that, makes how we use Nick Chubb. I say we, I'm not coaching this team. How the Browns use Nick Chubb. Listen, I know you told me my containment, it's growing. But the more that I think about it, the more that I'm excited to see how this all looks together.
Sure. I mean, that's like, I'm in the same boat. Like, even beyond the Browns, like I want them to lose every game, but I'm genuinely curious to see what the Ravens offense looks like.
Yeah.
With what they're going to have and some of the things. So like, yeah, it's the same with the Browns. And you're talking about like Nick Chubb is going to go out and be a pass catcher in certain points, and Deshaun Watson can win with his legs. And the defense still has to cover Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like,
they're going to have to pick.
It's a lot of work. And yeah, it does come down to choices. And that's where the Browns can sort of
have fun. Can we have fun?
Well, have fun, but also just not have to work as hard for yardage or points as we did last year, particularly as we got into the meat of the schedule and better defenses were facing Jacoby Brissett. I mean, whether you want to say the Browns offense was predictable, I think just Nick Chubb dictated quite a bit, and it was either going to him or some sort of fake away from him to create mismatches. You still have that, but the reason you got Deshaun Watson is if Nick Chubb's not on the field, Deshaun Watson's still supposed to be a mismatch. And that's where you have the opportunity to take this to another level. And we experienced this a little bit with Baker Mayfield in 2020, the second half of the year when they were just rolling. But the talent is better now. The quarterback is supposed to be better now. So now the opportunities for them to take off. And again, all of this is coming alongside a defense that can, hurt people. And I say that as we sort of look ahead to the Browns and Kevin Stefanski announcing the starters and, with as he put it, quote unquote, with exceptions, are going to play 20 to 25 plays against the Chiefs. And Andy Reid is non-committal on how much his starters are going to play. If they're not playing 25 plays and the Browns defense is on field, Chiefs backup quarterback can get hurt. Like, it's going to happen if they are putting in backups and trying to protect, even if Myles Garrett doesn't play, even if he's one of the exceptions, they're in for a world of hurt. And that's like one of the things I can't wait to see is like, how is this going to work on defense? Because if you get those two things going, and I think it's going to take a minute, I don't think the Browns are going to come. I mean, as much as I would love it, the Browns come out, score 40 on the Bengals while they score about 10 with Joe Burrow very, very bruised and battered by the end of the game. I think it's more likely to take a while to get clicking. Hopefully they don't lose guys to injury in that process, but that is where this thing can go. And then all of a sudden they take off and are potentially what we all hope is a dominant team for the second half of the season. But that's exactly right. It's like, it's fun to have all these players. It's fun to have all of this stuff that they've assembled. Now it's like, I can't wait to see what it looks like when they have it all going and what they want it to look like, as opposed to sort of vanilla and some of the stuff they're doing right now, which is just sort of what comes with preseason. And maybe that's what the Eagles got a taste of in those joint practices where Jalen Hurts is getting sacked 8 times or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, like, you're getting to see all of it, and it's going to be a problem. And that would be the ultimate situation, because there's going to be a game where the defense has to carry the offense. It's just how it goes. There's going to be a game where the offense has to carry the defense. The Browns at least have the pieces to accomplish those things. And then if they get both sides clicking, then they can play with anybody. Is
there going to be a game where Cade York has to carry the team?
There should be no game where any kicker has to carry the team. I didn't hear
you say that, so I just wanted to clarify.
That, and like, all these people like respond to you or whatever. They go, well, Justin Tucker. It's like, here's what the Ravens did in the offseason, because they're so tired of being reliant on Justin Tucker for all their points. They signed Odell Beckham, drafted Zay Flowers. They fired their offensive coordinator. They signed another receiver. They, all these guys they brought in because they're tired of relying on Justin Tucker to be all their points. We could talk all we want, but like, score touchdowns to win games. That's it. And yes, ultimately, Cade York's going to have to make a kick somewhere, but you score enough points, none of it's going to matter. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to.
Let's get 7.
Yeah, we shall see where that goes. How comfortable are you with the idea that the Browns are going to have their starters out for 20 to 25 snaps?
Oh.
Yeah, that's exactly. that's where I'm at because
Like, I want to see them like just as much as anyone else does, but I like not at the expense of getting an injury. Like, I just don't want to be stressed out watching this game.
yes. And look, you got examples. Jackson Smith Jigma is phenomenal in his preseason game. Broke a bone in his wrist. Now they think
Yeah, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Who's the other one? Oh, Washington's receiver, the Ohio State kid, got hurt with his foot in their streak-ending performance, beating the Ravens and ending their preseason streak. But like, yeah, like it has consequences, and it like is one of those things. Does that immediately take anything away that was beneficial from the game? And I'm inclined to think yes, it does. And those weren't major injuries, at least we hope. But like, if you get a nagging injury that suddenly you got to play a 17-week season and that thing does, it just sort of sticks with you. And then eventually maybe it becomes a bigger deal. Then that's where you get worried about it. So I'm inclined to, as always, never play your starters in preseason. The Browns have done this. And yes, I'm excited to see them. But at the same time, through, you're sort of the watch through your fingers type thing.
Yes, that'll be me.
Yes, I'm 100% with you. I'm
going to be in the fetal position.
That you're just sitting there going, great job. Get off the field. Like,
don't run too hard. Slow down.
Like the first play, Nick Chubb runs 5 yards. That's enough. I'm good.
That's enough. Get him out.
And he's another guy I don't think will play. I don't think Joe Bitonio will play. The big question mark will be, will Anthony Walker Jr. play or Sione Takitaki play? I am inclined to doubt it, but we shall see. That's obviously the big one because those guys haven't played at all yet. I think Sione Takitaki's got a little bit to go. Anthony Walker's much farther along, but like he's a guy you're going to start. Obviously, the other thing with this is like the game is on Saturday. We're recording this on Wednesday, and then you have basically 15 days until the regular season. So you're hoping that any sort of bumps and bruises have enough time to heal. But
it's going to be a long 15 days in between.
That's also true, but you get the roster. Some part of that is going to be roster cut down the 29th, and then it's going to be that first wave of claiming dudes, and then another wave of cutting guys to replace the guys that you just to make room for the guys you just claimed.
Yes,
and the Browns in particular are known for I will call them roster shenanigans with guys who are hurt. I say in quotation marks that they put on injured reserve or whatever while they are trying to get guys to either cut, to bring back, or whatever. So that part's going to be interesting. We're going to start to figure out what the roster is going to look like. And then the next wave is going to be what's the practice squad going to look like. And that part is going to be interesting. And then, so by the time we are recording the next week, we'll either be recording like the day of or the day after guys have been waived. So we'll have plenty to talk about from that. We'll have whatever we see in the Chiefs game. We will all have a good cry over the end of Darian Thompson-Robinson, hopefully, that we don't see him in the regular season. Again, every time we record, one, Bree and I have to like remember all the things that happened the previous week because there's so much. And two, realizing how fast this is all going. And even though we've got that, one more preseason game and then sort of a layoff, I think it will go quick enough. However, I do think that last week will be tough. That last week,
agreed,
will be difficult. Now, fortunately,
because you got Labor Day thrown in there. So
now you get a lot of college football, and then you're going to have the Thursday night, the NFL's teaser game to start the regular season. But it's going to be a while for that part. So I think that part will be rough. But a lot to look forward to and a lot to figure out. And one way or the other, Cade York's situation will be solved. But more than anything, it's the other parts that are going to matter more, quarterback in particular, offense, defense. And, beyond Cade York, I would say that Bubba's got some work to do across the board. Didn't love a whole lot of what I've seen from special teams so far in the preseason. And I get it, it's preseason and some of the things you see in terms of people. But like, yes, Cade York's a problem or something that needs to be worked on, something that needs to get figured out one way or the other. But like, that's the other thing I would keep an eye on that other game is like, I think like Jakeem Grant's supposed to return kicks in that one. Is that going to look better? Are we going to still have some of the same issues? I mean, Demetric Felton returned to punt backwards in the Eagles game. I didn't love that. So we're almost there. One more preseason game to go. Browns fourth one, everybody else's third one. And we'll be back next week to talk about all of it. And hopefully we won't have to talk about more kicker stuff because the research department that is Bree is probably getting pretty tired of having to go through that, but nevertheless, she's right. Anyway, do all the things for us. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, comment. We appreciate it when you guys reach out and tell us you like what we do. That's certainly helpful. But yeah, we'll be back.